The asteroid trembled beneath David Reeves' boots as alarms echoed through the dim corridors. Alien overseers sneered, calling humans foolish for trusting dangerous creatures. Somewhere in the shadows, beasts stirred, watching, waiting, intelligent and restless. And then, the first fissure cracked open, sending dust and fear racing through the colony. The asteroid trembled under David Reeves' boots as he stepped into the dimly lit docking bay. Red emergency lights flickered along the walls, casting long shadows that danced across the metal floor. A faint smell of burning circuits hung in the air, and somewhere deep in the asteroid, creatures shifted, their claws scraping against steel. "Status report," David called, his voice steady but tense. His heart pounded anyway. A young technician, pale and shaking, turned from the console. "All entry points are sealed, but there's movement in the lower corridors. Something's alive down there." David swallowed, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. He had been warned that the colony housed exotic creatures from multiple worlds, some predatory, some intelligent, but seeing them trapped and scared always made his stomach twist. The aliens in charge had never understood his methods. They called humans reckless, even foolish, for trusting dangerous beasts. He had learned long ago that patience and understanding often worked better than weapons. A metallic clatter echoed from the corridor outside the bay. David froze. A creature emerged from the shadows, its 6 legs moving with both power and caution. Its armor-like scales glimmered under the emergency lights, and multiple eyes scanned him, alert, calculating. He recognized the posture immediately, defensive, not aggressive. It had been hurt, frightened, and confused. "Back up," hissed one of the alien overseers, her voice sharp. Her blue skin gleamed in the red light. "That thing is dangerous. Humans have no right near it." David shook his head. "I can help it. You're just going to make it worse if you corner it." The overseer laughed, a sound that made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. "Trusting a predator? You are insane, human. This is why your species cannot hold positions of authority in our colonies." He ignored her. The creature's eyes followed him as he crouched slowly, showing no sudden movements. He pulled a small packet of synthetic protein from his pack and let it slide across the floor. The scent wafted through the air. The creature paused, sniffing, uncertain. David spoke softly. "I'm not a threat. I just want to help. You're safe with me." The air vibrated with tension. Other creatures stirred deeper in the shadows, their sounds low and uneasy. Alien overseers muttered to one another, clearly doubting that a human could calm a being capable of killing in an instant. "Do not approach," another voice ordered. A Telonian security officer raised a heavy stun weapon. David held up a hand, showing it empty. "No weapons. Not yet." The creature hesitated, then slowly it moved toward the food. Its eyes never left David. Each step was careful, cautious, testing for danger. He kept his breathing steady, his hands visible at all times. A crack split the floor beneath them, sudden and deep, shaking the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. The overseers screamed, scrambling for balance. David steadied himself, keeping his eyes on the creature. It flinched but did not run. Something else was happening, something far bigger than fear. "Structural integrity is failing," shouted one of the engineers, her voice barely audible over the alarm klaxons. "The asteroid, it's collapsing." David's heart sank. This was not part of the plan. This was not in any report or simulation. Panic rippled through the bay as emergency lights flashed red and white, signaling imminent disaster. Crew members grabbed what they could and fled toward reinforced exits. The creature hesitated in the doorway, ears flicking, claws scraping the floor. David stepped closer, speaking calmly. "It's okay. We need to move carefully. Trust me." He could feel the heat of adrenaline in his chest, mixing with fear. His mind raced, how to protect civilians, how to guide frightened creatures, how to survive a collapsing asteroid. Behind him, one of the overseers shouted, "Human, stand back. You will die if you interfere." David turned briefly. "And the creature will die too. Or worse, people will die because you refuse to understand." His words were lost in the cacophony of alarms, the grinding metal, the screams. The floor trembled violently, sending David to one knee. Dust and debris rained down, and somewhere above, lights sparked and flickered. The creature's defensive stance stiffened, then it froze entirely, sensing the danger. Its eyes flicked to David, and in that instant, there was a flicker of recognition. Two beings, both trapped in a collapsing environment, both trying to survive, both uncertain of trust. David extended a hand again, palm open. No weapons, no threat, just a gesture of connection. "We can get through this," he said, voice firm but calm. Together. A sudden roar echoed from deeper in the asteroid. Not the creature but the structure itself, metal tearing, rock shifting, entire sections collapsing. The alarms reached a shrill pitch. The overseers screamed, security teams shouted, and David could see cracks racing along the walls toward the docking bay. The creature backed against a wall, ears pinned, claws scraping frantically. David's chest tightened and he grabbed the protein packet, sliding it closer again. "It's okay. You don't have to fight. Just follow me." Another tremor split the bay. A massive piece of debris fell from the ceiling, smashing near them with a deafening crash. The creature flinched violently. David froze, barely breathing. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the creature stepped toward him, its massive armored body moving with calculated trust. Outside, the alarm screamed over the comms. Inside, humans and alien overseers alike held their breath, watching a single human kneel beside a dangerous, frightened creature as the asteroid itself began to crumble around them. And then, without warning, the lights went out, plunging the bay into darkness, the shaking worse than before. Dust filled the air, visibility near zero. David's hand stayed extended, hoping the creature could still see him. Somewhere in the darkness, a deeper rumble began, louder than any quake, moving through the asteroid like a living thing. And in that moment, he realized the danger was far bigger than anyone had expected. Darkness swallowed the docking bay, broken only by the faint sparks from exposed wiring. David could barely see, but the creature's massive silhouette was clear against the occasional flare of light. Its body trembled, muscles tense, yet it stayed close. He whispered softly, "We have to move." Slowly, carefully. His voice seemed to reassure it, even as fear gnawed at his own stomach. The ground beneath them groaned. A series of cracks had formed, and the asteroid's internal structure was no longer stable. Dust clouds made each breath harsh and gritty. David scanned for an exit, eyes darting along the walls, searching for shadows that moved unnaturally. Something did. A low hiss echoed through the corridor beyond the bay. David froze. The creature's ears flicked, and its claws scraped the metal floor in warning. The sound came again, soft, deliberate, almost like breathing, but uneven. There were shapes in the shadows, slim and fast, moving with a predatory grace. David realized immediately, whatever this was, it wasn't one of the colony's usual beasts. This was something different, something that had slipped through the cracks of the asteroid. "Stay behind me," he murmured to the creature, though it didn't understand words. Its massive form pressed closer, protective instinct clear even in its fear. David's hand hovered near the console's emergency flashlight, praying it still worked. He clicked it on and a narrow beam cut through the dust. Two small, lithe creatures darted from the darkness. Their skin shimmered faintly, almost translucent, with jagged spines along their backs. Their eyes glowed faint red, reflecting the flashlight. One hissed, circling, testing. The other froze, studying him. David's heart raced. These were not tame, not trained, and definitely not trusting. Yet, in the chaos of a collapsing asteroid, he had no choice but to face them. He slid a protein pack along the floor toward the nearest one, hoping for recognition, a pause, a moment to calm them. The pack was ignored. One of the creatures leapt forward, claws scraping the floor. David dodged instinctively, rolling to the side. Metal sparks flew as his elbow hit a console. The creature recoiled, then charged again, faster, more confident. David shoved a loose panel in its path, forcing it to leap over, buying himself precious seconds. "David, get out of there!" shouted one of the engineers from the shadows. Her voice trembled with panic and the sound drew more movement. From the other corridors, something deeper stirred, a low growl vibrating through the metal floor. David froze. These weren't isolated predators. They were hunting together, coordinating in the darkness. The creature beside him growled, a low, threatening rumble. It lunged at one of the intruders, its massive body slamming into it with force. The smaller alien screeched and skidded back, unbalanced. Dust exploded around them, and David felt a brief surge of hope. Maybe trust, between human and beast, was stronger than fear, stronger than instinct alone. A tremor shook the bay again. David stumbled, nearly losing balance. Debris fell from the ceiling, and one of the creatures screeched, retreating into the darkness. But the other stayed, circling. Its eyes never left David. "Over here," someone yelled. It was the young technician from before, waving a flashlight. David grabbed the creature's scaled shoulder. "We need to move." He pushed forward, leading them toward the exit, dodging falling debris and flashing lights. The asteroid's collapse had turned every step into a gamble. Behind them, the unseen creatures followed, slipping through cracks in the walls, hunting silently. David glanced back. The creature beside him growled again, standing between him and the predators. Its massive size and protective stance were the only thing keeping them safe. He could feel the trust forming, fragile and tense, but real. The corridor narrowed, and David had to crouch, the creature pressing alongside him. The sound of metal twisting echoed from deeper in the asteroid. He realized with horror that the structural collapse was worse than he thought. Entire sections were falling inward, sending clouds of dust, sparks, and jagged metal flying. "Almost there," he shouted, though doubt crept into his voice. The exit was close, a reinforced hatch leading to the lower level. But he knew reaching it wouldn't end the danger. The asteroid was alive in its own way, unstable, unpredictable. And those creatures, they weren't finished hunting. A sudden shriek split the air, a high, piercing cry that made David's blood run cold. He froze. The creature at his side tensed, muscles coiled like springs. Something large and unseen slammed against the corridor walls behind them. Dust exploded into the air, and the ground tilted beneath their feet. David grabbed the creature, pulling it forward, shouting, "Keep moving! Don't stop!" The walls groaned as the asteroid shifted. Cracks raced like lightning along the metal, sparks flying as they split open. The air was thick with dust and fear, and the distant echoes of unseen predators stalking them grew louder. David could see the light of the hatch up ahead, a faint glow in the dark. It was their only hope. He reached the final stretch, sliding under a fallen beam with the creature right behind him. Behind them, a shadow moved, a massive shape, faster than expected, pushing debris aside with unnatural strength. David's heart stopped. The predator had grown, evolved somehow in the chaos, more dangerous than anything he had encountered before. He stumbled toward the hatch, hand on the lever. "Come on, come on," his breath came in ragged gasps. The creature leapt through after him, and for a moment they were together, safe, almost. A deafening crash shook the corridor. The unseen predator slammed against the wall, sending chunks of metal flying. David felt the vibration through the floor, through his bones. The hatch door began to close. He shoved it with all his strength, hearing the creature's claws scrape behind him. And then, just as the door slammed shut, the asteroid groaned deeper than ever before. Something massive shifted within its core, a sound like tearing rock and grinding metal that promised even greater danger. The corridor beyond them was plunged into darkness. David's chest heaved as he clutched the hatch lever, sweat and dust coating his skin. The creature beside him leaned close, sensing his fear, its massive eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He realized with a shiver that the danger was not only outside. They were trapped inside a collapsing asteroid with predators moving unseen, more dangerous than anything they had faced. The last thing he heard before everything went quiet was a low, resonant growl from the dark, coming from somewhere deep in the asteroid, far too close and far too intelligent. The hatch slammed behind them with a metallic clang that echoed through the corridors like a gunshot. Dust choked the air, and David coughed violently, gripping the lever to steady himself. The creature beside him growled low, muscles tense, its massive body pressed protectively against his side. The corridor beyond the hatch was darker, narrower, and more unstable. Every step made the floor creak, sending shivers up his spine. David's mind raced. They had escaped the initial predators, but the asteroid itself had become a new enemy. The tremors were growing stronger, resonating through the metal like the heartbeat of a dying giant. He looked back at the hatch, now half buried under fallen beams and debris, and realized they couldn't rely on the same path to retreat. They would have to go deeper into the asteroid to find safety. "Stay close," he whispered to the creature. It tilted its massive head, eyes scanning the shadows, ready to protect. They moved forward slowly, each step a test of balance and courage. The walls shuddered, and a crack snaked across the ceiling above them. David froze as a chunk of metal fell, narrowly missing his head. The creature roared, slamming its massive shoulder into the falling debris and pushing it aside with brute strength. David's heart pounded, a mixture of fear and awe. He had never felt such raw power and loyalty from a beast before. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the corridor. The asteroid groaned as if it were alive, deep within its core. Dust rained down, and the floor beneath them tilted. David stumbled, clutching the creature's scaled hide. "We have to move faster," he shouted, though his voice sounded small against the roar of collapsing metal. From the shadows ahead, a new sound emerged. Something heavy was shifting inside the walls, moving with deliberate weight. David's stomach tightened. These weren't the smaller predators from before. Whatever was in there now was massive, intelligent, and hunting them. He could hear it breathing, slow and deliberate, each exhale shaking loose more debris. A deafening crack split the corridor. The ceiling above bent, a long fissure opening like the asteroid was tearing itself apart. David dove forward, the creature right behind him, its massive body smashing into the side wall to clear their path. They slid under a jagged beam as it crashed down behind them, dust choking the air, sparks flying from exposed wiring. "We can't stop," David yelled, voice raw. His hands were scraped, blood mixing with dust. He pressed on, dragging himself and the creature through the narrow passageways, each one twisting deeper into the asteroid's core. A shadow moved above them, long, serpentine, slithering along the ceiling like a predator hunting from above. David froze, heart hammering. The creature growled, leaping up and snapping at the shadow. Sparks flew as claws met metal, and the shadow hissed, retreating for now, but David knew it would follow. They reached a junction, a wide chamber that had once been a storage bay. The floor was cracked, littered with debris and fallen machinery. David's eyes fell on a deep fissure running through the center, a canyon of jagged metal and smoke. He swallowed hard, feeling panic rise. The asteroid wasn't just unstable, it was actively collapsing. "We have to jump," he shouted to the creature. Its ears flicked, sensing danger. Without hesitation, it crouched, muscles coiled, and leapt across the fissure. David followed, landing hard on the other side, pain shooting through his legs, but he rolled to absorb the impact. The moment his foot hit the ground, the chamber groaned again. Metal screamed as part of the ceiling broke loose, smashing into the fissure below. The shockwave sent dust and sparks flying, and David staggered, coughing, vision blurred. He glanced at the creature. It was still standing, massive and unwavering, its eyes fixed on the shadows creeping closer from the far end of the chamber. A sudden noise made David freeze. Something massive was moving inside the walls, a low, grinding, deliberate sound that shook the entire chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the shadows from the cracks revealed a shape so large and unnatural it stole his breath. It moved with a terrifying intelligence, its body blending with the metal around it, eyes glowing faintly red. David's pulse raced. It's not just the asteroid," he whispered, voice trembling. "Something is hunting us, and it knows exactly where we are." The creature growled, nudging him forward, urging him to move, its loyalty unwavering despite the fear in the room. They pressed on, deeper into the asteroid, dodging debris and twisted metal. Sparks flew as unstable cables fell, arcs of electricity sizzling through the air. Every step felt like walking on the edge of a knife. David's lungs burned, muscles screamed, but he couldn't stop. They had to find a way to the lower levels, to the core, where maybe they could find control or at least temporary safety. A distant rumble grew louder, echoing through the tunnels. Dust fell in sheets as if the asteroid itself were screaming. The creature pressed close, massive paws striking loose metal that clanged with a metallic cry. David gritted his teeth. He could see the faint light of a secondary hatch far ahead. It was their only chance. Just as they neared it, a shadow slithered across the floor, wider and longer than anything David had seen before. It coiled, ready to strike. The creature reared, roaring, its body a wall of muscle and determination. David's heart thumped painfully, adrenaline coursing through every vein. The asteroid groaned violently, sending loose panels, wires, and shards of metal flying. The hatch was almost within reach, but something massive, far larger than any predator they had faced, thumped in the corridor ahead. Its glowing red eyes reflected the dim light, locking onto them. David froze, terror striking deep. The creature growled, paw raised, ready to protect. Dust and debris swirled like a storm. David realized the real collapse had begun, not just of the asteroid's structure but of their safety. Whatever was hunting them was smarter, bigger, and faster than they imagined. And it wasn't alone. David's lungs burned and his legs shook, but he kept moving. The creature pressed close, its massive form a living shield against the shadows creeping along the walls. The hatch ahead was their only hope, but it was partially blocked by twisted metal and falling debris. Sparks arced from exposed cables, and the walls groaned with each tremor of the collapsing asteroid. "Hold on," David whispered to the creature, voice hoarse and strained. He scanned the room desperately. Then his eyes landed on the panels along the wall, old maintenance tools, wires, and what looked like a pressurized energy canister. A plan formed. "We can use this," he muttered. "If we can reroute the energy, we might create a distraction." The creature tilted its head, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, sensing his intent. It shifted closer as David pulled wires from the panel, hands trembling with urgency. Sparks flew and the smell of burnt metal filled the air. The massive predator from before thudded closer, its glowing red eyes cutting through the dust, and David could feel the intelligence behind its gaze, calculating, waiting, doubting. He pressed on, connecting wires, diverting energy to the canister. Come on, he muttered, heart pounding. The creature nudged him, massive paw brushing against his shoulder, encouraging him forward. They worked in silence, every sound amplified by the asteroid's creaking corridors. Suddenly the predator lunged, massive jaws snapping shut mere inches from David. The creature roared, leaping into the path and striking with enough force to send the alien staggering backward. David seized the moment, completing the circuit and pressing the activation switch. The canister hissed, glowing, then exploded in a controlled burst. A wave of light and heat erupted, throwing debris and shadows across the chamber. David stumbled, shielding his face. When the smoke cleared, the predator was gone, at least for now. He looked at the creature, panting, eyes wide. We did it, for now, he said, voice shaking. The creature let out a low growl, scanning the shadows, ready for whatever came next. They moved quickly through the chaos. The secondary hatch loomed ahead, cracked and bent, but passable. David climbed, dragging the creature with him, muscles screaming with the effort. Behind them, the asteroid continued its collapse. Walls buckled, floors split, and dust filled every corner. As they reached the hatch, David noticed strange markings along the walls, faint symbols glowing under the asteroid's internal lights. His pulse quickened. These aren't natural, he whispered. Someone, or something, was here before us. The creature sniffed the air, ears twitching, sensing an unfamiliar presence. Suddenly, a voice crackled over a damaged communication device David had grabbed from the panel. It was faint, distorted, but unmistakable. David, you're not alone. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He looked around, heart racing, but the chamber seemed empty, except for the massive predator lingering in the distance, observing, calculating. The markings on the wall seemed to shift, faintly, almost like a warning. David realized the alien had been doubting humans' ability to survive, mocking them in ways beyond instinct. But the humans had proven clever, using strategy and improvisation. They were unpredictable. Dangerous. The creature growled again, low and steady. David placed a hand on its massive head. They don't understand us, he said quietly. They think loyalty and strength are enough to stop humans. But they don't see the mind behind it. The predator's glowing eyes narrowed, sensing that thought, that spark of ingenuity. A tremor shook the hatch, dust cascading down. The walls cracked further, threatening to trap them. David grabbed a loose beam and wedged it under the hatch, holding it just long enough for them to squeeze through. The creature followed, its bulk scraping against the metal, sparks flying. They landed on the other side, panting, bruised but alive. The corridor ahead opened into a massive chamber, a control hub, abandoned but functional. Panels flickered weakly, lights casting long shadows. David ran to the console, fingers flying over buttons and switches. The asteroid's internal systems were failing, but he could reroute power, stabilize sections, maybe even manipulate gravity fields to slow the collapse. His heart raced. This was their chance to fight back in a way no predator had anticipated. The predator appeared at the far end of the chamber, massive and tense, watching. Its glowing eyes reflected doubt, confusion. It had expected humans to panic, to flee blindly. Instead, David was using his mind, adapting to impossible conditions, turning weakness into advantage. Think fast, David muttered, rewiring the final circuits. The creature pressed beside him, massive head low, ready to strike if necessary. Sparks danced, panels hummed, and the asteroid shuddered violently. The predator snarled, uncertain, its calculated movements slowing. Then the systems responded. Gravity shifted slightly, corridors that had been collapsing now stabilized just enough. Panels rose, debris fell into safe zones, and the predator's path was blocked. David exhaled sharply, disbelief mixing with triumph. The predator recoiled, a growl of frustration echoing through the chamber. For the first time, David realized the truth. Humans were not just strong, not just fearless. They were clever, adaptive, and relentless. The creature nudged him, sensing the victory. David looked out at the asteroid's fractured interior, the shadows moving in uncertain hesitation. We're not done yet, he whispered. But they're starting to understand, humans are more than they think. David's breath came in sharp, uneven gasps as he stood at the edge of the main control hub. The asteroid's interior trembled violently, jagged chunks of rock tumbling from above. The massive creature beside him growled low, its body tense, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to strike. Somewhere deep inside the asteroid, a pulse of energy rippled, and the walls seemed to shiver as though alive. "They're coming," David whispered, eyes scanning the shadows. "Whatever caused this, it knows we're here." The creature pressed closer, its massive paw brushing against his leg in a comforting, almost protective gesture. David's hands shook as he gripped the console, trying to reroute what little power remained to stabilize the asteroid's failing systems. A sudden explosion rocked the chamber, sending shards of metal and rock flying. Dust choked the air and David coughed violently. When he looked up, the predator from before had returned, larger and more menacing, its glowing eyes blazing with suspicion. But it wasn't alone. Smaller creatures, strange and angular, scuttled along the walls, their movements precise, coordinated. David's stomach knotted. They were intelligent. Calculating. "We can't fight them all directly," he said aloud, though the creature clearly understood. "We have to outsmart them, like we did before." His mind raced, looking at panels, wires and energy conduits. There had to be a way to create a controlled collapse in one sector, diverting attention and opening a path to escape. The creature growled, nudging him toward a side corridor partially shielded by fallen beams. David ducked, following its lead, heart hammering. The predator hissed, trying to block their path, but David grabbed a loose pipe and swung it with all his strength, the metallic clang echoing through the chamber. The predator flinched, giving them just enough space to slip through. The corridor narrowed, walls glowing faintly with alien symbols. David traced them with his fingers, realizing they were warnings, something about balance, life and collapse. "They're trying to teach us something," he murmured, awe and fear mingling. The creature's ears twitched, sensing his understanding. He realized the asteroid itself wasn't just a trap, it was a test. Suddenly the ground beneath them shuddered violently. Rocks split, and a fissure opened wide enough to swallow a human. David grabbed the creature, pulling it back just in time. Dust and debris rained down, and he shielded his eyes as sparks from damaged circuits danced around them. His hands were scraped and bleeding, but he didn't stop. Every second counted. "We have to think like them," David muttered, realizing the predators were responding to their fear, their hesitation. "We have to move without fear, predict without panic." He spotted a control panel dangling from the ceiling, still powered enough to shift gravity in a small section. This could work," he said, climbing onto a fallen beam to reach it. The predator appeared in the next chamber, massive form blocking their path. Its glowing eyes locked onto David's, a silent challenge. The creature beside him bared its teeth, letting out a deep, resonant growl. The predator hesitated, judging, calculating, then lunged. The companion beast leapt, colliding with it mid-strike, sending both tumbling into a wall. Sparks and debris flew, and David didn't waste a moment. He activated the control panel. Gravity shifted sharply in the predator's chamber, making the floor buckle and walls tilt. Rocks crashed down, separating the predator from the corridor and forcing it into a temporary trap. David exhaled, heart racing. "We did it," he whispered, though he knew the challenge wasn't over. The asteroid's internal tremors increased, cracks spreading faster now. David and the creature ran, following a path that twisted through jagged rock and glowing symbols. The alien intelligence controlling the collapse seemed to anticipate them, but David's mind raced faster. Each step, each decision used logic, intuition, and instinct together. He realized that trust between him and the beast was as critical as any tool or strategy. Finally, they reached an observation deck near the asteroid's surface. Through the cracked viewport, David could see space beyond, the void speckled with distant stars. The asteroid groaned, a massive fissure running through its center. "Almost there," he said, voice hoarse, filled with determination. The creature nudged him forward, and together they moved toward the escape pod partially buried in rubble. The predator emerged one last time, massive and imposing, but it didn't attack. Its eyes met David's, and for a fleeting moment, there was understanding, a grudging acknowledgement of human cunning and courage. The creature growled softly, sensing the predator's hesitation, and David seized the chance to launch the pod. The asteroid's collapse accelerated, massive chunks breaking away, but the pod's engines flared, lifting them into the void. Dust and rock tumbled past as David gripped the controls, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. The companion beast pressed close, massive head resting against the hull as if reassuring him that they had survived together. David exhaled, a mixture of relief and awe flooding him. "We did it," he said, voice trembling. They thought we were foolish, but we survived. Together. The Predator watched from the crumbling asteroid, now reduced to a shadow among falling debris. David realized that humans weren't the strongest, weren't the largest, but ingenuity, courage, and trust could turn the impossible into survival. As the pod drifted into safe space, the asteroid exploded behind them in a brilliant cascade of rock and fire, a silent reminder that life, trust, and cleverness were more powerful than sheer strength. The creature let out a triumphant roar, echoing in the pod, and David laughed, tears mixing with sweat. They had learned the lesson of survival. The mind, the bond, and the courage to act without hesitation could triumph where others doubted. Humanity had proven itself, not by brute force but by heart and intelligence.